Hey, Matt,
Yes.
I'm gonna kill you if you don't beat me to it.
That's how we're starting this?
Exactly. There's no other way to start a Phoebe Bridgers review than quoting that lyric there, man.
Alright.
Alright, hey, yeah, welcome back, everybody. So we are back at it again. This is a podcast called Hey, Listen to This, which you probably already know because you clicked onto this episode and you can read. So congratulations for getting this far.
Well, you never know. This could be their first time listening to us, so if you don't know us, I'm Matt Derzik.
And I am Ryan Kearns.
And every episode we talk about an album that we've listened to. Sometimes an album we've cherished for many years. Sometimes an album we listened to for the first time. Or sometimes an album that's crap. We haven't really done any real crap albums yet, but we might get there.
Kanye West was pretty close.
Kanye West.
Kanye West. No, Kanye West was pretty close to being crap, to be honest with you, man.
Yeah, and you weren't a big fan of Exile in Guyville either.
Yeah, that was pretty crappy. Well, like, now, what would you consider to be like a crappy album? Like something that we were like rate below, like lower than a 5?
I would say, yeah, lower than a 5 would be where we would go.
Now, would we purposefully suggest an album that we would just be like, hey, let's rate a crap album, or are we gonna continue with our format and be like,
that is a good question. I don't know.
I want to say no. Let's not do that.
Let's find the crap organically in the wild.
Yeah. Maybe like one day, like we can like pick a random new metal album just to revisit that time period with a fresh new set of ears. But as it stands right now, it's based on how I want the albums I want to pick and the direction I want to go. Like new metal and Limp Bizkit and Korn are far away from here.
That's perfectly fair. So this album that we're doing today is not in that category. It is an album that Ryan selected called Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. And Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and let you explain why you chose this album.
So Phoebe Bridgers is one of my favorite female singer-songwriters. This album is... I'm just going to spoil it out right out of the gate. I freaking love this album. Okay. And there's one specific song on here that I thought would speak to you as being a country fan. So. Okay,
I think I know which one you're talking about, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Miss Bridgers, and I wanted to showcase another record in my collection that that's a little bit more modern day that I have some major love for that I know that you haven't personally explored.
Right. And since then I've explored it 2.5 times. Okay. So I think I'm ready to go. Let's get right into it.
So. Brief introduction to Phoebe Bridgers. She got her major break from touring with one Conor Oberst from Bright Eyes fame. That's how I actually discovered her. Me and my wife went to go see Conor Oberst in concert, and Phoebe Bridgers was opening up for Mr. Oberst. And at the time, I was just like, oh, well, this is a cool, female singer-songwriter act. But, nothing really stuck out to me. It wasn't until I heard the song Kyoto that I was really drawn in, and then I decided to check out Punisher as a whole, and the rest was history. And so Punisher was released in the year of our Lord 2020. Yeah. And it really does encapsulate the feeling of loneliness and isolation that the pandemic did bring across the world.
I definitely feel where you're getting at. I don't think it's as direct as you're making it, but I definitely understand where you're coming from. Because the one thing I do like about this album a lot is the overall tone of it seeming consistent, number one, and painting a picture in your head of just where this is taking place. Because throughout the whole album, particularly on one song, which we'll get to, which I think is the highlight of the album, this whole album feels like it was recorded in her apartment. Half the songs, she's laying in bed just thinking about her life, trying to process everything. Maybe she'll get up and get a cup of coffee or go to the keyboard and pump out a tune or something. But overall, it's just sort of this. You're right. It's sort of placed together all within this tight space that doesn't have a whole lot of room for expansion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Like, I can definitely see, like, the where you're getting at. Like, it was basically like in one environment, one state of mind, and just one entirely, like, mood. So, that being said, you ready to kick it off with DVD menu?
Yes, let's kick it off with DVD menu, which I will say is probably more important than it is good.
Yeah.
And I love the name of it. I think that's the best part of the song is the name of it.
Yeah.
Because talking about being alone in your apartment, especially during COVID, is that, a DVD menu just sort of this, like, setup piece or this piece of music that just sort of loops around and sort of sets the mood for whatever it is that you're about to go through. And so I think in that regard, this is a perfect starter to the album, just in tone and and when I say perfect, I don't mean perfect as in like, oh my goodness, it has to be like considered among like Bohemian Rhapsody and Stairway to Heaven. No, not like that. But for the album itself, it sets the scene perfectly to what's about to come next.
As compared to whenever we did the Black Country New Road episode, man, like how the first track off of that album was instrumental, and you and I were talking about like, hey, like this doesn't really introduce themes or like the feeling of the album. DVD menu, which is a much shorter track compared to instrumental by Black Country New Road, gets right to the point, and it is pretty much what it says it is. It's basically like, if you pop into DVD, this is what you get.
Yeah, this is the music that you're listening to when you forget to, you slept halfway through the movie, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, your head's in a daze, all the lights are down from the sky and up in the city, and you're just kind of like, well, man, I don't know what's going on with my life, and that's, the music that goes along with it.
Yeah. So, moving on to Garden Song. And the transition from DVD menu to Garden Song is pretty seamless, in my opinion.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. It's fascinating, too, because it doesn't really... The two songs really have nothing to do with each other, but the sonics, like you say, the flow, it just goes from one to another seamlessly.
Yeah. And right out of the gate, you get hit with what the song, the album, and what basically Phoebe Bridgers is as a whole in terms of like her compositional style, and that she really dials in on her vocals. The instrumentation's more of a backdrop. If you zone in on different parts here or there, it really adds to the elements of what the song is bringing.
Mm-hmm.
But like the main attraction while you're there is to hear the vocals and the lyrics. And the lyrics paint such a vivid image of like in specific this song about growing up and seeing a neighborhood change. Like when I was revisiting this song in preparation for the podcast, I kind of had to do a double take whenever the lyric about your skinhead neighbor goes missing, I'll plant a garden.
Yeah.
I had to do a double take. I'm like, wait, what? Because I didn't catch it the first time, because it was more like, I don't know, I feel like with this song and maybe a couple others on this album, if you don't listen to the lyrics, this song is this could be a vibe.
Exactly, and I think and spoiler alert, this is how I feel about most of the album, is that I think the vibes are stronger than anything else. Mm-hmm. Not that the lyrics aren't strong themselves, because you're right, the lyrics do paint this image of sort of waking up and sort of thinking about things, and
mm-hmm.
The freshness of a new day and the freshness of wanting new things and being goal-oriented at the start of everything. Mm. I think that the album, the album as a whole, but this song in particular, does a very good job of doing that. Now, am I the biggest fan of the production on this album per se? Not really. And I don't mean it's bad, because I think this album is very good, spoilers, but it's just not my cup of tea to have that sort of floaty sort of, it's almost too vibey at times, to the point where, you mentioned how the lyrics stand out. There were times listening to this album, because I listened to it specifically while driving. And there were just times where I was just like, like I sort of got lost in my own thoughts while the album was like, oh, right, this album. So the vibes sort of carry it more than anything else. But that's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah. I can get behind that, man. I can understand where you're getting at with that. Not much else I can really say about this specific song. Like, when I'm talking about, like, the song is basically about growing up and seeing your neighborhood change. Like, lyrics that that showcase this feeling are, I don't know, when you got taller, see your reflection in the water, off a bridge at the Huntington. So it's basically about, like, hey, like, you and I don't know what happened, but we've changed, and, like, we grew up, we got taller. And the only other thing I have to say about this song specifically is that the lower vocals matching Phoebe's in the chorus are very nice.
They are. They come out of nowhere, but they are very nice. You're right. Because you're just thinking, what is that? Who is that singing? And why is this working so well? But it does work very well, and it's nice touch. And the one last thing I'll say about it is that there's a theme towards the end of the song, talking about, I'll be whatever you want, and that is a theme that does come back more so at the end of the album, and I think sort of ties everything together toward the end.
Yeah. All right, ready to move on to Kyoto?
Let's move on to Kyoto.
All right, so interesting fact about this song, man. This originally started out as a ballad.
Really?
Yeah. And then Phoebe was basically like, I don't know if I want to have too many ballads on this album. So they took that backing, the instrumentation, and just kicked it up like almost like double speed. And this was the end result here.
Yeah.
So Kyoto was my introduction to this album, more of a formal introduction to Phoebe Bridgers as a whole, and oh my gosh, I love this song so much.
I can see why.
Yeah.
I can see why. This song is very, I would probably say it's the most upbeat song on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely get behind that. But yeah, this song just starts out with like you get really right into Phoebe's mindset with like lyrics of day off in Kyoto, got bored at the temple, looked around at the 7-Eleven. The band took the speed train, went to the arcade. I wanted to go, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a very I almost want to say touristy vibe to the song that it feels like it doesn't feel like so much like she's visiting Kyoto as her telling you about her visit to Kyoto. How she's a tourist and it's just like, this seems cool, but I'm more interested in this, and ooh, this looks interesting, payphones. They still have payphones, And I think that mixed with the upbeat, almost mid to late 2000s keyboard work that's going on here, I think does paint a very good picture of sort of this touristy vibe, or and talking about the feeling of isolation. This feels like the escape part of the isolation, where you just have this memory of going into Kyoto and thinking, "Oh, that was fun," right, before the rest of the album goes back into reality.
I feel like this album as a whole has dueling elements of like Phoebe's feelings about being back home and just seeing like how things have changed and how desolate things are there, and like just seeing like, oh wait, I have this whole other life where I'm visiting like here and here and here and here and here, and even towards like I think even specifically the last song, I don't feel like Phoebe ever finds peace anywhere. But going back to Kyoto specifically, the one line that I did reference to start out the podcast, man, is "I'm gonna kill you if you don't beat me to it." The chorus off of Kyoto, and first listen to that catches your eye, right? It catches you right away, right?
Right.
And along with that, like how the chorus hits you with like this swelling brass and strings. It is top notch, man. I have no notes on that. I absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, it's a good song. It's a good song.
And when I did a little bit of some research into like that line, because maybe she wrote that line as like a kind of a haha, look at me, I'm being so funny kind of line. But apparently that line is basically describing her relationship with her father. And apparently her father has a tendency, or had the tendency, I don't know what the end result of the story was, but to be an alcoholic, be addicted to drugs, and she was just extremely frustrated with him at that point.
Gotcha.
And like, there's lyrics of like, at the end of the first verse, she's talking about, you call me from a payphone, they still got payphones, it costs $1 a minute to tell me you're getting sober, and you wrote me a letter, but I don't have to read it.
Yeah, every time I listened to that line, I was thinking, what is that about? Because it feels like, in the context of the entire album, like it might be about a guy, or maybe the guy throughout the album that she's trying to be with, or was with, or whatever the case was. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because it does provide a little bit more clarity. And perhaps, again, maybe the fact that it's about her father maybe is another form of the escape. Just sort of, I'll deal with this problem in my mind, so I don't have to deal with the other problems of, where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And then even to add to that, like the second chorus, it changes up. It doesn't repeat the same exact line. The second chorus goes, I don't forgive you, but please don't hold me to it. Born under Scorpio skies. I wanted to see the world through your eyes until it happened. Then I changed my mind. So that's basically Phoebe being like, especially with the last couple lines, being like, hey, I wanted to like experience the world the way that you taught me how to do it, but I kind of changed my mind. And basically this is her forging her own path and basically trying to separate herself from her past.
Right, which is again a good thing to do. And again, I think it does a nice job of tying this piece of escape with the reality that, hey, there was a part of me then that wants to get away from what it was. So that by the time we get to, this part of my life, that part of me still wants to call the shots. That part of me still wants to be in charge of where I want to be in life. So even though it's not about the same person, there is a parallel within Miss Bridgers.
Oh, man, I love this song so much.
Yeah? Would you say it's your favorite song on the album?
No. There are, I would say, 2 other songs top it. So this would be my top 3.
Top 3? Okay.
Yeah, top 3. I don't really feel like there's a bad song on this album.
I would agree with that. I would agree that there's not a bad song on the album, but we'll get to that point, because there are songs that are not as tight-knit, I would say, as the others, but we'll get there.
All right. So, ready to move on to Punisher?
Let's do it.
All right. So, I let off Kyoto. I'm going to let you lead off Punisher, because I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
So, Punisher is interesting because this is the first, I would say, real dark song on the album, at least sonically. Mm-hmm. And this is probably the first time of a few times on this album in particular where I'm thinking that the sound of it is good. But I was talking before about how the vibes tend to carry the song more than anything else. This is one of those songs where it just feels like you could sort of, turn your mind off and just listen to it. And that's not to say that the lyrics are bad, because I'm sure that they're not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, through I think 3 listens of it so far, there's not one part of that song where I can like distinctly, from the top of my mind, be like, oh yeah, that song, that lyric in that song. Which for songs like Kyoto, and a couple other songs down the line, there were a couple more gotcha moments. I was like, oh yeah, I like that. I just didn't find it with this one.
I would say with this song specifically, I would maybe disagree with you on, not on the lyrics part, because absolutely, this song specifically, the lyrics are pretty straightforward. It's detailing her walking through a town at night, and her being on drugs, and essentially this song is basically a love letter to her idol Elliott Smith. And what I really was drawn to on this song, one, it's an incredibly beautiful song, man. Like, holy cow. But, like, there's different compositional elements that really just stuck with me. Like, I love how the instrumentation just drops out during the pre-chorus, during the lines, where she's talking about being in, plain, sight. It's like she's drawing you in, and you're like, I'm absolutely all there for it, man. Like, holy cow. I
will say that when I listened to it for the third time, I agree with you on that. That did drag me in a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the best part of the song. And I think, too, this is one of the first songs where I think her singing really stands out. And it does get better with the rest of the album, but this is one of the first time where it was mostly her voice carrying it. And again, I think I wouldn't even say disdain for it. It's just it's not for me thing. It's just how it just sort of floats sonically. Like, I'll confess here, you know, I'm a sucker for big beat. I'm a sucker for structure. Yeah. And while there is a little bit of that here, it just didn't like grab me as much as other songs on this album particularly did.
You know what's actually kind of interesting that you brought up? You said, like, you know, Phoebe really shows off her vocal chops here. Mm-hmm. But, like, I'll be the first one to admit, I love Phoebe Bridgers, if nobody could tell right now. But, like, in terms of, like, having vocal chops, like, you know, like, top of female vocalists, like, in music history, like, I wouldn't put her up there with the best. But, in terms of, like, technical skill, but you know what really brings you in? Is just the way that she sings. Yeah. It's so sincere that you absolutely believe every word that's coming out of her mouth. And
that goes for a lot. You know, it's the old sort of the adage with Bob Dylan where, like, on a proficiency level, he's not like a classically trained or even a good singer per se, but you know that he's singing his heart out and you know that he is projecting honesty. And Phoebe Bridgers does the same exact thing here. Yeah. Or at the very least, she projects an honest image of what she wants you to hear on this album, which is in and of itself very good.
Man. Also, in my research, man, I discovered, this is the title track off the album. And I was kind of curious, like, why is this album called Punisher? Why is this song called Punisher? Yeah. It's basically, like, in her words, a Punisher is basically people who really drag drain people of, like, their energy, that those people who are doing the draining don't even realize what they're doing. Right. So, like, specifically, like, you know, even from, like, she was more coming from a fan standpoint of, like, you know, hey, you're a famous rock and roll star. Hey, Matt, I love you so much, man. Like, you know, I was so depressed by the day I came to your show and I took drugs, okay?
Can we just make that the intro for the podcast from now on?
But, like, you would probably be overwhelmed. You would be, like, you know, pretty drained. And, like, there's a lyric in there, like, especially in the chorus, like, she talks about, what if I told you, I feel like I know you, but we never met.
I do remember that line sticking out to me, too.
Yeah. So, like, I feel that line with the context of, like, what she's calling a Punisher and how this is basically a nod and, like, her love for Elliott Smith, it kind of ties it all in together. Yeah. Again, love the song. Not one of my favorites off the album, but that's basically comparing, like, you know, platinum to, like, gold. So,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's a lesser good song, but still a good song.
I would agree. All
right, so ready to move on to Halloween?
Yes.
All right, so give me 1 second here. Dun 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 dun. Pulling up the lyrics, but yeah. So Halloween. So this song was actually co-written with Conor Oberst.
Oh yeah.
Of Bright Eyes fame. Maybe one day we could do like a Bright Eyes album review.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, because I think I've referenced them so much in this podcast so far.
I think you have.
Yeah, it's actually kind of getting a little disgusting.
It's all building to something.
But yeah, no. So Halloween shows off Bridgers' compositional strength. It's very bare bones instrumentation, but everything is planned and perfect.
I agree.
Yeah. Like,
honestly, I'll just say right now, this is my favorite song on the album.
oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, this was the song where it felt like it does sort of float in the same way that Punisher does, but it feels more structured. And I love the opening lines of "I hate living by the hospital. The sirens go all night. I used to joke that if they woke you up, somebody better be dying." I mentioned earlier how the entire image of the album was sort of like her lying in bed, just trying to cope with life.
Yeah.
Those lines right there was what sealed it for me. It's like, okay, I know how this album feels, I know what it's about, and I have come to peace with it.
Absolutely, man. Oh my goodness, her lyrics really suck you in right away with that specific part, like, you know, and it adds to, like, you know, her relatability and, like, just really what draws you in, like, because you can just imagine yourself being that person, like, but yeah, other aspects that I'm going to talk about with this song specifically. So this song is basically about being in a dead relationship,
right?
Basically going through the motions, being like, baby, it's Halloween, we can do anything, and it kind of like, I was listening to this song right as I was walking my dog for the dinner walk, and just to, like, you know, refresh a couple of different songs in my brain for this podcast, and it kind of made me feel like this. Have you listened to, and if you haven't, I don't judge you, Olivia Rodrigo's Driver's License?
I have not.
Okay, so it's been a while since I've listened to it, but, like, Halloween, this song specifically, like, this is what Olivia Rodrigo was trying to go for with Driver's License. Like, you know, sad girl driving in a car at night, and, like, you know, just that kind of feeling that you can just imagine, just putting your head up against a window and just looking out into the night sky.
Right.
Like, I'm not a fan of Driver's License. I'm sorry for those of you who are Olivia Rodrigo fans. But, like, this song blows it out of the water. And the only other thing I have to say about this song specifically, the outro featuring Conor Oberst is such a nice touch, because with the song specifically being centered around being in a dead relationship, bringing in a male presence in there, especially one that had such a heavy hand in writing the song, is a pretty nice nod.
Yeah, I really don't have anything else to add aside from, again, it's a nice sparse tune. It gets its point across perfectly, and yeah, to me it's the centerpiece of the album. And the one last thing I will say about it, though, is that towards the end we start hearing this theme again of, you know, I'll be whatever you want, I'll be whatever you want, which is a contrast from the I forget the name of the damn song. The second one, Garden
Song.
Thank you. Well, I guess it would have been easier if I just guessed. In Garden Song, where she talks about getting whatever she wants, where now she's willing to sacrifice, saying, "I'll be whatever you want." But because it's Halloween, is it really whatever she wants or whatever he wants? You never know. It could just be a costume.
It's basically like, you know, the equivalent of being in a relationship, being like, hey, where do you want to go to eat? I don't care. Where do you want to go? I don't care. Where do you want to go? Like, that kind of back and forth.
A little bit. And then you pick a choice just like, well, okay, I guess.
I know. All right. Chinese Satellite.
Chinese Satellite.
All right. So this is one of my favorites off the album.
Okay.
I would say, with the songs that have been talked about so far, I would say this beats out Kyoto.
Really? Beats out Kyoto.
And it's mainly because, like, my memory, like, of really experiencing the song where it really hit me for the first time, where the chorus really pops off, and she talks about, so took a tour to see the stars, but they weren't out tonight. So I wished hard on a Chinese satellite. And this part really hit me, like, because when I heard the song for the first time and it really hit me, I was walking my dog at night. I'm doing a lot of my listening while walking my dog.
Yeah, I'm noticing a pattern.
Yeah.
I drive, you walk dog.
Yeah. But the part that really hit me, like, I experience it at night. I want to believe, instead I look at the sky and I feel nothing. I hate to be alone, I want to be wrong. And like how that's, like during that part, how it becomes a big open chorus, where it's not just being like, the typical millennial, like, whoa, oh, like, it's so nice, man. But yeah. What are your thoughts on Chinese Style?
I will agree with you that the lyrics are some of the best on the album. Sound wise, I think it's up there with Kyoto. So not quite my favorite, but at the same time still very good. And I do agree that the chorus tends to pop off a little more this time around than it would on perhaps something like Punisher, or even Kyoto, for example. Like I think like Kyoto, for what it is, it's more of a consistent pop thing where like this one, the chorus stands out more than the verses, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like even quickly going through the track listing, I feel like this is the biggest chorus off the whole album.
It's up there,
yeah.
And I think there might be a couple that are maybe bigger, but that could just be me talking. We'll find out.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about discussion, man. So at the end of the day, so going a little bit before the chorus, because this song has a little bit more than just like that big old chorus feeling. So I mean, the song is basically about the feeling of wanting to take a leap of faith because you feel like you don't belong and you haven't been yourself. And this kind of ties into the themes of like Phoebe's mindset of like not wanting to be, like not belonging in her hometown, and just not really feeling like she is herself, and she's just not unsure. Yeah.
I know we compared this song a lot to Kyoto. One final comparison I'll make to that is that with Kyoto, it feels like, I mentioned it being escapist, like she's escaping to a memory in Kyoto.
Yeah.
This feels more like she's trying to escape but can't. So instead of trying, escaping to, this feeling of love on a shooting star or on a Chinese satellite, she just realizes that may not be meant to be, so she's going to feel like, a little devoid, but the sound of it is trying to match that of Kyoto, which means that her spirit is trying to match that of memory so long ago.
Yeah. One last thing I'll talk about Chinese Satellite, and then we can move on to Moon Song, as opposed to Garden Song.
Yes.
10 out of 10 with the song name there, Miss Bridgers. But the transition from verse to chorus with the addition of drums from the first verse to the chorus is absolutely amazing. Like, she has this tendency throughout this whole album to really just have the compositional strength and mindset to like just keep adding parts and parts and parts. And it's not as chaotic as like Black Country New Road. And when we discuss that, it's more like, oh hey, like we did this, and I'm gonna add this other spice over here,
right?
And then I'm gonna add this other spice over here, and then I'm gonna add this other spice. And before you know it, your mouth is just like like overwhelmed with flavor. And I feel like if I could take a step back, I do recognize that this album came out in 2020, but I feel like that's the lack of change up and the lack of adding different elements with Liz Fair's Exile and Guyville. That's what really held it back. If she would have maybe added one or two more elements, again, I know different time and it wasn't the approach that she was going for,
right? But
it's my right as an American citizen in America to have an opinion, especially if I have a podcast, to be like, this is like, because even if you take a further step back, this album as a whole, Punisher, basically has the same kind of vibe, and it clearly kind of does the same kind of thing over and over again. But what draws me into this album specifically is that there's different, Phoebe's vocals, they really draw you in. The lyrics are very sincere, but she has a compositional mindset of just adding here and here and here. If you really take the time to listen in,
right,
that like just absolutely speak to my heart.
Right. I get that. And the one thing I'll say into that comparison is that I think this album as a whole is sonically and structurally more cohesive than Exile in Guyville. I will say that Exile in Guyville probably had more gotcha moments that are more pertinent to, is that a word? Pertinent to my likings and my tastes. But I will say that overall, I would say this album is more cohesive in trying to get its message across, both sonically and lyrically.
Yeah. Side note, maybe one day, in terms of like, this might be going off on a tangent, but I don't care. Maybe one day we can review a Beach House album.
Okay.
Because we're talking about vibey. That's just straight up vibes, and I'm like, you're talking to somebody that has listened to some Beach House. I'm like, I don't know if I can deep dive it and like really be like, oh man, the lyrics here, because it's basically kind of like shoegaze. But I digress. So,
okay,
Moon Song. I'm gonna let you lead this one off.
Okay, Moon Song, I would say, is a return back to the reality where the previous song was a sort of trip or trying to grasp at the escapism of Kyoto. This song in particular goes back to her laying in bed contemplating, or the sound of contemplating, and I would say the lyrics here are the key part of this song. The first lines seem almost tragically romantic or romantically tragic, talking about you asked to walk me home, but I had to carry you and you pushed me in, and now my feet can't touch the bottom of you. You couldn't have stuck your tongue down the throat of somebody who loves you more. So I will wait for the next time you want me, like a dog with a bird at your door. And I feel like it's hard to decipher what exactly this means. You might have a better job at doing this, but to me it feels like this is going back to the looking for love part of the album, where she's like, oh, this felt romantic, but I'm not sure if it was romantic. I'm not sure. You might be a monster, you might be a punisher, or I might love you. I don't know.
That's basically it, man.
Okay, cool.
Moon Song is basically between this and Halloween, it's basically a relationship fighting back and forth, man. And the whole line about like a bird with a dog with a bird at your door, this is basically referencing hey, if you come back, if you break up with somebody and you bring them back into your life, they want to show that they changed. Hey, look what I'm bringing to the door here.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, man, I absolutely love the chorus where it's just stuck your tongue down the throat of somebody who loves you more. Because you can really when we talk about Phoebe's ability to be sincere and really draw the listener in. There's no perfect example other than that. There might be a couple, there's a few other examples, but that is a prime example. And no other notes about that, man.
Yeah.
You did an excellent job describing it. It has a nice waltz feel. Love the lo-fi feel to this song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Can't say any more.
I'll say a little bit more. It's that I think there's a line in here I'm looking at right now where it says, there's something I'm supposed to say, but I can't for the life of me remember what it is. And if I could give you the moon, I would give you the moon. 2 points to that. Number one, I feel like we talk about the last song being escapist, or at least trying to be escape. I feel like that's another attempt at it. She goes on rambles about Tears in Heaven and the baby died, which is obviously a reference to Eric Clapton's song Tears in Heaven, which is about his baby dying.
Yeah.
And then sort of goes off on a tangent about fighting about John Lennon, but then she just sort of drifts off into this realization of, okay, well, I still love you.
Yeah.
So I feel like she's almost trying to escape from this love that she's hoping for, but at the same time, she realizes that that's what she wants at the end of the day.
Yeah. You know what I'm kind of thinking about, man? I don't know if this might be a direct relationship to a literal person, or this could still just be about her hometown.
Could be.
Yeah.
I did not consider that option, but it could very well be a possibility.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like I never really considered that until listening to you talk about this.
Right.
So.
And just to be clear about this, Phoebe Bridgers is a independent woman. We are two white guys, so we are never going to truly understand what she's talking about.
Yeah. Side note, you know what I discovered the other day about her?
What's that?
She is, or apparently was, in a relationship with one Bo Burnham.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
I think she still is.
Yeah. That would make sense, because she did cover that song, That Funny Feeling.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They should do a collab project.
Oh, that would be legendary. Props for you, y'all out there who caught that censorship on my part.
Yeah.
All right, so ready to move on to Saber Complex?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so Saber Complex, again, with a nice waltz feel to start out the song. The nice bits of random noise are very nice. And the violin in between chorus and verse is also a very nice touch. Like, this is very... this has a lot of strings in there. Mm-hmm. And the song is basically about her dealing with her own personality, with, like, the lyrics... the lyrics that show this are, "Baby, you're a vampire, you want blood, and I promised, I'm a bad liar with a savior complex. All the skeletons you hide, show me yours and I'll show you mine."
I agree with that. I will say this is probably one of the few songs on the album where the music does more of the work than the lyrics.
Yeah.
Not that the lyrics are bad, but I love the music on this track, particularly the going from the second chorus, I think it is, to the bridge back to the chorus. It just flows so nicely. Mm-hmm. That key change, talk about Bo Burnham. Y'all dumb. Okay, we won't say the line. But yeah, the key change is beautiful. Like the way it comes back to the last part of the song is just phenomenal. And I talk about vibes on this album. This is where it is a positive for sure. Slight side note for me this time. One album I was thinking about a lot, and I think this might have been the first song that I thought about it, is an album that you introduced me to, Dragon, New War, Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief.
Yeah.
I felt like the vibe on this particular track was very similar to that. Yeah. Like very country-ish or folk-ish, with weird sounds, but very smooth flowing sounds there. Now, granted, overall, it's not the same. Yeah. Big Thief, that album was recorded in a cabin in the woods. This album was recorded in a New York City apartment. There's no question about that whatsoever. But vocally and in the same timbre, there are a lot of similarities with this song to that band.
Maybe one day we can review that Big Thief album.
Oh, jeez. You want to do a 2-hour episode? Is that what you're hoping for? Is that what you were pushing on me, good sir?
Actually, if I can go off on a tangent, and forgive me for doing so. I mean,
go for it.
It is our podcast. But if I can recall correctly, I feel like that album that we're referencing from Big Thief was recorded in 3 separate sessions. So we could technically record
our podcast in 3 separate episodes.
Yeah. That would be a clever nod. But I feel like it might defeat the purpose of our podcast, where like we both listen to that album, so we're very familiar with it.
True.
So, that being said, back to Miss Bridgers. Do you have any other notes to say about Savior Complex?
For Savior Complex, no. I think it's a very good song.
Okay. So, and now we're going to go into the last leg of the album with I See You.
I See You.
And this is a savage song. This is basically about a breakup that she had with her and her drummer, if I can remember correctly. The lyrics about let me see here. If you're a work of art, I'm standing too close. I can see the brushstrokes. Basically saying, hey, I can see your imperfections. I hate your mom. I hate it when she opens her mouth. It's amazing to me how much you can say when you don't know what you're talking about.
Dang.
And I was listening to a podcast that basically had Miss Bridgers talking about this album, this song specifically. Apparently, this mom, in particular, voted for Trump. So that lyric is referencing that.
Oh boy.
But even dialing it back, like the intro with the dueling strings is super nice. The open feeling during the first refrain is amazing. Where she's talking about like, but I feel something when I see you now, and I love how like there's so many elements and so many instances in this album where Phoebe really just opens it up. It doesn't do like a big chorus, but you can really like relate to that feeling.
Yeah, I feel like this one, like there were a couple moments, particularly the lyric about I used to light you up, now I can't even get you to play the drums, where the lyrics stuck out to me.
Yeah.
But this fell a little bit more on the vibe side. Like the vibes are different now. It feels like the vibes are slowly shifting towards that countryish feel that Garden song and the last song had provided.
Yeah.
Savior Complex. And there's not a bad song on this album, but this one didn't quite stand out to me.
Yeah. I feel like the reason why this one sticks out is the line about I hate your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to be fair, I had not caught in the first 2 times I'd listened to it, so...
You next time you listen to I See You, you're gonna really...
Yeah. I'm just gonna get out of the car and just do that meme where the dude's like spreading his face and go like, oh!
Alright, so ready to move on?
Let's do it.
Oh, okay, hold on. Let me do the justice here. I'm bringing up Graceland 2's lyrics.
Justice.
Alright, so I'm going to let you lead off Graceland 2.
Okay, Graceland 2. I've been talking the last couple songs about the country feel of the latter half of this album.
Yeah.
This definitely kicks it up a notch. And it's also, when in my research, I learned that one Julianne Baker makes an appearance on this song. And I will say the harmonies that she shares with Phoebe Bridgers on this track put this song right behind Halloween on my favorites on this album. Mm-hmm. This song is so good.
This song is easily my favorite song off the album.
Okay.
Like, when I was doing my notes here, like, I can even show you, like, I wrote, love, 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 love the old school country feel.
Yes.
And the nice thing about this song is I don't think it's, like, a big, song in terms of, single or airplay. Like, maybe, while we're doing some research here, I can pull up the Spotify numbers. But it has a personal feeling to me, because I don't know if I listened to this one time when I was not feeling myself, and I needed a calming presence. But this song, not that I would ever really have a rational mindset whenever I'm experiencing a panic attack, but this song, along with Jesus, etc. from the last from the Wilco episode that we did, those songs basically probably have the capability of calm me the hell down.
Those are your warm bowls of soup.
Oh, absolutely, man. And just pulling it up real quick here. So Graceland 2. Okay, yeah, it's up there in terms of streams. Halloween, Chinese Satellite have lesser streams than Graceland 2. So
this would probably be the big song off the album if there was one to be a single.
Big songs, again, take this with a grain of salt with Spotify numbers. Big songs according to Spotify are Kyoto, the next song off the album, I Know the End, and Garden Song. Those are the top 3 songs off the album.
Gotcha.
But in terms of you made the nod to Julianne Baker. There's also another female singer-songwriter that makes an appearance off of this specific song. That's Lucy Dacus. So
okay,
one day we'll talk about her. But this song is basically about loving someone who does not do a very good job of taking care of themselves. And this is highlighted with the lyrics of, she picks a direction, it's 90 in Memphis, turns up the music so thoughts don't intrude, predictably winds up thinking of Elvis, and wonders if he believed his songs could come true. And just I don't know, that vivid imagery, especially with that first first verse talking about how she basically made up her mind and laced up her shoes, yelled down the home, but no one answered. So she walked outside without an excuse.
Right.
It's basically her leaving, and I don't know if this is a nod to Bridgers' own mental state about wanting to leave either the relationship that we've referenced so much in this album, or the hometown aspect, but there's just so many elements here that kind of tie them together, man.
Well, talking about tying things together, you mentioned the relationship part. Again, at the end of the song, talking about I would do anything you want me to. I will do anything, whatever you want me to do, I will do whatever she wants, whatever you want. So, especially compared with the last song, it feels like, to me, this is where, if this album is about a relationship that she wants to have, or a life that she wants to have based on a relationship, maybe she wants, the big house, the picket fence, and everything like that, that this is her realization, this is her last gasp, saying, I'll be whatever you want, just as long as you're in my life.
Yeah.
And realizing that if she can't have the romantic aspect, she can at least have an aspect.
Yeah. Another note that I'll say about this song specifically, then we can go on to I Know the End, unless you have any other notes. This song was written in Nashville, so...
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. But, I can't say enough about this song, it's a very close second. Very close, the next song is a very close second to Graceland 2, but just the impact that this song had in that specific time of my life when it really hit, it will always be a comfort to me. The layers of banjo, strings, and bass is absolute perfection. This is, I should probably start making a Spotify playlist of, perfect songs, and this would be up there. This would easily make that playlist. I know notes about this album. There's nothing wrong with this.
Where can I go from that?
All right, so you know where you can go from there?
The end.
Yeah. Do you know the end?
The end is here.
Ah, there you go. All right, so I let off Graceland 2. I'll let you start out. I Know the End.
So the reason I was talking about how the last song felt like the last gasp at trying to get a relationship or that life of the American dream life. This feels like the realization by the protagonist of this album that that's not going to happen, and that this is the end. And this feels like just her realizing that all this is a pipe dream, and looking at the lyrics. When I get back, I'll lay around, and I'll get up and lay back down. Romanticize a quiet life. There's no place like my room. Bam. There's the whole album in one chorus right there.
Absolutely, man. You talk about, indecision, being hey, You hit the nail right on the head. Even before that, she talks about somewhere in Germany, but I can't place it. Man, I hate this part of Texas. She's she doesn't even know where she is at that point.
Yeah.
And then close my eyes, 3 clicks, and then I'm home. And then it goes into the next one that you're talking about. It really gives that dual element of hey, this is where she's experiencing confusion where she is now. And then, the part that you're talking about is just basically, hey, she romanticizes about, just her previous life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then from there, it goes into, one of my favorite parts of the album. And, maybe by the end of this discussion, or you can ask me if this song officially took over Graceland 2. Because more and more I think about it, the more and more I love love the crap out of this song.
Okay.
But the chorus that happens after that, where it's like she's talking about, but you had to go. I know, I know, I know. Like a wave that crashed and melted on the shore. Like, such vivid imagery, and like how she repeats, I know, I know, I know. Like, holy cow, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say much more about that other than, like, that's excellent songwriting, excellent vocals, excellent vocal delivery.
I will agree with that, as far as it being excellent songwriting, excellent vocal presence. However, I would say what doesn't work for me on the song is how at the end it gets. I mean, it works in a literary sense how it sounds.
Yeah.
Where the end some sort of comes crashing in, and she's going this rambling tangent. I do really love the lyrics of, either way we're not alone. I'll find a new place to be from. A haunted house with a picket fence to float around and ghost my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's her realizing, okay, well, I guess I'll just try something else and, hope it works and, maybe continue to live this life where I just dream and my dreams don't come true.
Yeah.
But sonically, it just doesn't work for me. It's a little too noisy towards the end. And this is the part I am trying to break your heart. I mean, it's not bad. It's just not for me.
For those of you who are not tuning into our live feed, whenever Matt was talking about his his love for the ending, I took off my glasses and
rubbed his eyes,
and I'm like, ugh.
I was like, "You SOB, what have you done?"
Because I absolutely love the ending to this song. We'll get to there. The transition between the opening part and let's see what my notes say. So, rewinding it a little bit here. So the second chorus goes from it talks the first chorus talks about, but you had to go. I know, I know, I know. And the second chorus goes, so I gotta go. I know, I know, I know. When the sirens sound, you'll hide under the floor. But I'm not going to go down with my hometown in a tornado. I'm going to chase it. So basically, this is her decision to hey, I'm going to leave town. And I'm going to just, make life on my own. And from there, the song changes pace.
Right. Which, again, I like that it does that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound great to me.
I respectfully disagree with you.
That's fair.
This is our podcast. But from there, you really get the sense of her basically getting in her car and just driving the hell out of town. And especially with the lyrics where she's talking about, no, I'm not afraid to disappear. The billboard said the end is near. I turned around, there was nothing there. Yeah, I guess the end is here. So it's basically saying the end is basically where she came from. And she's making a whole new life from her own. And, when you talk about, the different elements of,
mm-hmm.
what we talked about in this album, with her dealing with an ex-love, with an alcoholic father, her separating her own life, basically being hey, I can't be here anymore. And from there, the absolute chaos that you love.
Again, I like how it's. I like what it did. It just doesn't sound as. I'll make this comparison.
Okay, yeah.
You talk about how the song goes, I know, I know, I know, and then sort of ends in this gigantic realization.
Yeah.
A song that immediately came to mind is the song "Angry Woman" by Ash, which I think does this sort of realization, or at least this sonic boom of chaos at the end, a little bit better than this one does.
Okay.
I think in a literary sense or literary sense of telling the story, the way it's done sonically is good. I agree with what this song does.
Yeah.
It's just when I put it in my ears, it's not a song I would want to listen to repeated times.
Okay. This is a song I can revisit a couple different
Right.
times.
And I'm speaking as of now. 10 years down the line, it might be, I might write a whole book based on this song. But for right now, it's just not in my wheelhouse.
Or maybe 6 months down the road.
Or maybe, you never know.
It would be interesting to, maybe a couple of years from now, whenever, we get, 1,000 followers on Spotify, we can do, a redo on a couple of different album choices. But that being said, the end, basically where it's just, a bunch of different instrumentation clashing in together, and, the soul-shattering screams that you hear in the background, holy cow, man! That was the icing on the cake, and what even drove it home is after everything is said and done, the last little bit that you hear from the album is Phoebe basically running out of breath and trying to scream.
Yeah, which again reminded me of. This is the second time in 3 episodes I'm going to reference Sleepaway Camp, aren't I? Yeah, pretty much. Spoilers, but not spoilers.
If you guys have not seen that movie, 10 out of 10.
I
would recommend.
No notes. Speaking of ratings.
So, yeah, that is basically the album as a whole. I feel like we did a good job on it.
I think we did too.
So, I'm just going to basically say this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
I figured you would. I figured you were going to say it was a 10 out of 10.
Big shocker. I'm a huge fan of this album.
Any notes to add to that, or?
Just her ability to be very sincere. There are some tracks where it's not as prominent, where she's able to show her compositional strengths, but every song can't be an Italian sausage. But
I know what you mean by that, but at the same time, what?
It can't be just a perfection piece. You gotta do some other elements differently. Even when I visited this album, songs like Punisher, Moon Song, Savior Complex, those songs that I wasn't as familiar with, I really got sucked into. Even in our discussion, when you made the comment about Phoebe being a very good vocalist, and I thought about she really doesn't really have that much chops to her wheelhouse, but her main appeal is her ability to draw in. Also, just again, compositional elements, her big songs, Graceland 2, and I Know the End. This easily is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Okay. Well, I will say you've done a little bit of convincing for me, but not enough to give it a 10. I will say this is an album where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay.
Listening to this album from front to back is a great experience. There's not a bad song on the album. There's, a couple songs that are just kind of there, which are the worst ones. But at the same time, you talk about the Italian sausage thing. And I'll admit, I do like, the musical equivalent of an Italian sausage, which I guess might be the title of this episode. I don't friggin' know. But, there wasn't, aside from the harmonies on Graceland 2, or perhaps the instrumental interlude on Savior Complex, or the lyrics on Halloween, there weren't really a whole lot of gotcha moments where I would sing a lot of song and be like, okay, I want to listen to this over and over and over again. I think this album is very good. I think this album is fantastic. I think the lyrics are fantastic. But just based on the general vibes of it, there wasn't a Jesus Etc. or a Bound to or a Sunglasses per se that really stood to me. I was like, yes, I want this so bad. I need this in my life every day type of song. But overall, the album is very good. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to listen to it. You've convinced me. I'm going to give it an 8.
Mission accomplished.
I originally was starting 7, and then I was like, okay, maybe a little bit, and then I was just like, okay, it's an 8. Because realistically, compared to Exile in Guyville, there are gotcha moments on that album that I like, but I think this album is a little bit better than that as far as cohesion and structure and just overall presence.
I can absolutely get behind that, and like, to be honest with you, like, again, you don't have to base your ratings on like what
I don't. But the more I thought about it, it's like, is this album really as good? Because I was gonna give it a 7.5, like compared to Exile and Guyville, but I'm thinking it's better. It's better. It's especially as a whole album. Now, like, would there be songs on Exile and Guyville I would rather listen to, for the most part, than ones on this album, Punisher? Maybe, but I don't know. It's tough. But I overall, great album, great lyrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So for yins out there who are like, hey, where do I go from here if I want to listen to more Phoebe Bridgers? So there's a couple different avenues that you can do. But if you really specifically love this album and you want to explore different Phoebe Bridgers from here, I would point to her previous album, Stranger in the Alps. And like, these are her only two like solo albums that she has. So Stranger in the Alps is the official recommendation that I'm doing, and then Punisher is the album that we just reviewed.
Yeah.
And then like other projects that she's worked on. There's Better, Oblivion Community Center. Let me just make sure I got that correct. Oblivion. Yeah, it's her collab project with Connor Oberst. No, I got that right. That's her collab project with Connor Oberst. And then there's also the big record that came out with Boy Genius literally called The Record.
Yeah.
And then they also released an EP. But like, if I were to give an honest recommendation, I would recommend people to check out Stranger in the Alps or Phoebe Bridgers after you get done listening to Punisher.
Okay. I kind of spoiled it earlier as far as what my recommendation would be. I at first thought maybe something along the lines of like Blue by Joni Mitchell, sort of another introspective album about a relationship, which I would recommend to anyone who hasn't listened to it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you're a part of that, but whatever. But I will stick to my guns and say that if you want to listen to an album about sort of this in the same tone of a vibey album with very sparse elements, Dragon, New World Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief.
Excellent album, man. Excellent album.
Absolutely.
All right, so that being said, it is your turn to pick the next episode.
It is my turn to pick the next one.
Do you know what you're going to pick?
You know what? Let me ask you this. Have you listened to Blue by Joni Mitchell?
No.
Then that's going to be our next album.
All right, cool. So we're just continuing on with, our theme here.
Yeah, our female singer-songwriter era.
Okay, cool. So do you have any other notes to say about Phoebe Bridgers as a whole before we send this out?
Just that if you like the album, I would... because I know listening to this and thinking, especially with like Graceland 2, I'm thinking, because I learned that, they collab together in Boy Genius, I'm thinking, okay, I might check that out too. But since I haven't listened to it, I can't really recommend that. But aside from that, I'm glad I listened to this album.
Yeah. And I'm glad you liked it too, man. Like, I was kind of nervous because I was listening to it like a couple of days ago. I'm like, yeah, I really like this, but I don't know if there's enough here that Matt can really like sink his teeth into. Right,
and you had the right concerns, but ultimately, I think, again, listening to the album as a whole is probably the best way to listen to this album. Like, there's only a couple of individual songs I think stick out, but mostly, if you really want to appreciate this album for what it is, start to finish. And it's only 40 minutes long, so it's not going to take you that long.
Yeah. All right, so that basically does it for this episode of Hey, Listen to This. If you like this episode, please do us a favor and rate us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform of choice.
Nope.
Share this podcast with a friend. Share it with your dog's friend. Share it with your friend's dog.
Yeah.
And you can find us on all social media platforms, including Threads.
We have Threads now.
As of today.
When we're recording this, not when you're listening to this.
Yeah, that would be That'd be interesting if you're able to, like, edit this down and post it in one day, man.
Oh, no. 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 I got a hockey watch tonight. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And if you guys have an episode idea, feel free to hit us up on our mailbag at ttheylisten@gmail.com.
You reach out to us on Twitter?
Yeah. TT.
And it's still called Twitter.
Yeah. I refuse to call it X because I don't want to let the communists win.
Yeah. No.
But yeah. For the last time for this episode, I am Ryan Kearns.
I'm Matt Derzik.
And thank you for listening to this episode of Hey, Listen to This.
And,
This is the end.
This is the end. Was that what you were trying to get me to do?